Hello there. Welcome in to this Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call it in, text it in. One other way of communicating, if you're watching this program on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300, you could just fire off a message there. So let us begin. We've all had a night to sleep on what the Nuggets did yesterday, to ponder it, to mull it. Where are we at? I'll start, and then you can jump in if you didn't have a chance to yesterday, or if something has come to you over the course of the last 24 hours. Here's the cold, hard truth, one of many in professional sports. To remain on top, you at times, or to get to the top for that matter, along the way you are going to have to make difficult decisions. You have to be, at times, cold, calculating, unfeeling. You have to treat the human beings under your employ as numbers on a spreadsheet, as assets. I'm not saying that's a great way to always think about them, but there are times where you need to remove emotion from the equation. Where you have to put personal relationships in what this player or coach has done for you in the past. You have to put it away, and you have to look at just the here and now and then the future. And say, does this fit? Does this person fit? Are they going to help us? The Avalanche, owned by the same guy, although sometimes you won't even know. Right? And that's an old joke that's gone on between the Avalanche and the Nuggets, that you would hardly know that the Cronkies own the Colorado Avalanche, but they do. And no matter how engaged they are, they catch wind every once in a while of what the Avalanche are doing. The Avalanche just made one of these decisions. And it was the decision to trade Mikko Rantanen. Okay? It was quite shocking. He was a very popular player, so the decision was quite unpopular. And the Avalanche probably didn't, and that remains my biggest sticking point with the whole Mikko Rantanen trade, is I still don't love the way Chris McFarland went about it. I still felt like Mikko Rantanen maybe deserved better on his way out, given what he had meant to the organization. It was a little unceremonious, if I'm being truthful about it. But now, fast forward a couple months later, how do you feel? How do you feel about the Colorado Avalanche now, and how do you feel about them moving forward? Doesn't actually change how you feel about Mikko Rantanen. I never wanted to get into this stuff about how he fared in Carolina and, the Avalanche won the trade because Mikko's struggling in Carolina, or vilify him for signing with the Dallas Stars or agreeing to sign with the Dallas Stars after he got traded there. Doesn't change what Mikko Rantanen did for the organization, but they made a tough decision, an unpopular decision, but a decision they felt was necessary. And when I say that, when I describe the Mikko Rantanen trade, even if you're not a hockey fan, you could just replace, I think in many ways, the name Mikko Rantanen with Michael Malone. You don't have to hope that Michael Malone fails in his next spot. Him being fired doesn't negate the legacy that he created, what he meant to the organization. And certainly when I talk about the popularity of this person, how unpopular the decision may be, maybe more the timing was more of a sticking point, I think, for many people yesterday, taking your thoughts rather than ultimately the decision. And maybe there's some parallels between Michael Malone and Mikko Rantanen in that regard too. Because Mikko Rantanen gets traded just a day or two after, in his mind, he thought that the Avs were getting close to signing him. Nope. Trade him to Carolina. He was blindsided by it. I'm sure Michael Malone felt in similar when he was called up and Josh Kroenke said that he was going to be relieved of his duties. So I do think there's a lot of parallels between Mikko Rantanen and Michael Malone. But here's the question that I have. Is this firing Michael Malone the Mikko Rantanen trade for the Denver Nuggets? The unpopular decision to let go of a very popular person, a key figure in the franchise's recent history, met with shock, met with disappointment, met with anger. But is it a necessary, at least in the mind of the organization, a necessary means to an end to get this organization, whether it's the Avalanche or the Nuggets, back on top? Because even though there are a lot of parallels in the reaction to the Mikko Rantanen trade, as there was to the Michael Malone firing yesterday, I actually don't think that firing Michael Malone is the Nuggets equivalent of the Mikko Rantanen trade. I don't think the pain is over yet. I think your threshold for pain as a Nuggets fan, if you have a great affinity for this franchise and for the people in it, I think your pain tolerance needs to go up because I don't think you're done hurting. If there is truly an Avalanche comparison to what the Denver Nuggets did yesterday, look at yesterday like that stretch of days where Chris McFarland completely replaced his goaltending room. Like, I think that is the better comparison. There's no way that we can continue on under these circumstances. For the Avalanche, it was their goaltending situation. For the Nuggets, it was the toxicity between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. What Josh Kroenke did yesterday, to me, is like when Chris McFarland got rid of Georgiev and Onanen, and it ended up with Wedgwood and Blackwood. And what did that signal? We now know in retrospect, that was just the beginning. That was not the Avalanche going, all good now. No. Maybe the more difficult decision came later in the form of the Mikko Rantanen trade. I think that the Nuggets version of the Mikko Rantanen trade is probably should be trading Jamal Murray. Now that the focus is completely on the roster, okay, you've removed the variables of Michael Malone and Calvin Booth and their relationship. And now it's just, okay, is that going to be enough for this team? And I don't think it ultimately will be. I think whoever comes in and replaces Calvin Booth is going to look at this roster and say, this isn't good enough to win in a Western Conference that's getting better by the day. And I think the really tough day for Denver Nuggets fans will be when Jamal Murray is traded. If, I do want to emphasize, if he is traded. That would be more comparable to what the Avalanche did with Mikko Rantanen. And here's my justification for looking in Jamal Murray's direction first. Because don't misunderstand me. Every single player on the Nuggets roster outside of Nikola Jokic is at least worth a conversation about moving. Every single one of them. So I'm not saying don't look at trading Michael Porter. I'm not saying stay as far from Aaron Gordon as you possibly can. I don't love the idea of the Nuggets getting rid of Aaron Gordon. But here's the problem. If you look at what the Nuggets did yesterday as the equivalent of the Mikko Rantanen deal, and you're saying, because the thing about the Mikko Rantanen deal, it wasn't just what they got in return for Mikko Rantanen. That wasn't good enough. Right? It was what they did thereafter. Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle, to a lesser extent, Ryan Lindgren. But it was reformulating this team as much as Chris McFarland could. From a fast-paced, wide-open defense, not always at the top of their minds or at the top of their skill set list, to a more defensive-oriented, better goaltending, tougher to play against, more grip, more sandpaper, more physical, heavier, all of these things that you would describe the Colorado Avalanche as now, more so than before they traded Mikko Rantanen, or even at the beginning of the season. Problem with the Nuggets, and this gets to the very heart of the Booth v. Malone. None of these young players have value. You know, Casey Middlestat still had enough value for the Avs to be able to basically swap them straight up for Charlie Coyle. You're not getting what you need by trading Peyton Watson. You're not getting what you need by dumping Zeke Naji's contract. And that's why I say the Nuggets, they have to look higher up in the flow chart here. They have to look at that core four. To me, that is, you can't even bundle the younger players together. Maybe you could get somewhere with Christian Brown, but he alone is not going to get you what you need either. You have to look at the core four players. And once you say, I'm not even bothering looking at trading Nikola Jokic, then you really get into it. You can't reasonably expect to compete for championships on a regular basis if your second best player is unavailable. or if your second best player is not at 100%. Part of the greatness of Nikola Jokic is he's there every game. And even though he might be dealing with something, he is at full strength in terms of what he can do on a basketball court. 4 of the last 5 years with Jamal Murray, he has not been healthy when the playoffs have come around. And this year's going to be another one of those. This is the 4th of the 5 years. This is not anything against who Jamal Murray is when he's on the court and when he's healthy. He's spectacular. He's Mikko Rantanen. He's a terrific player that they don't win a championship without. This is not diminishing what Jamal Murray has meant to them, but this is a practical matter. You can't have your second best player in a league that is reliant on duos to only have a guy. So as we remove the issues with Michael Malone and Calvin Booth and you focus on the roster and what may need to be done there, I look at Jamal Murray first. I don't know what you're going to get, but I know you can get more for Jamal Murray and you could go further to reshape this team. Right? Because here's another thing that could save Michael Porter in a way. Who's going to shoot threes if not Michael Porter? The Nuggets right now, to one degree or another, are lacking health, depth, three-point shooting, and perimeter defense. None of those things Jamal Murray helps. None of them. So if the Nuggets assess this team the last 3 games of the season and then going into the playoffs, and they see that their lack of three-point shooting costs them again, their lack of perimeter defense costs them, their lack of depth costs them, the lack of health from Jamal Murray costs them. If all these things or some combination of them become pain points again and could be ultimately what costs the Denver Nuggets in the postseason, you have to find a way to remake your roster to be able to address those needs. And the guy who is their biggest issue, not as a player, but their biggest issue because he is unavailable. The Nuggets are trying to win titles now, not 2 years from now, not alternating. They're trying every year to win. And they can't rely on Jamal Murray. That's why you look there first. And when they do it, if they do it, that is going to be a very unpopular decision. There will be a lot of people, the same people yesterday, that are saying this is the worst thing to happen to the Denver Nuggets ever, are going to be feeling that same way the day that the Nuggets, if they trade Jamal Murray. But that to me looks like the only logical place to look first. All options are on the table. That's where I would look first. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247, 1313. Coming up next, no surprise, but the vultures are circling the Denver Nuggets, and they are looking at one person in particular. Tom Segura is bringing his Come Together tour to Colorado Springs on Sunday, November 9th. Tickets on sale now. Couple of good places to get them. AXS.com or in person at the Pikes Peak Center box office. I am not surprised that the direction that the conversation surrounding the Denver Nuggets has gone in the last 24 hours. In fact, I'm not surprised at how quickly the conversation moved. It was, in the national media, it was about 5 minutes of, wow, this is shocking that they fired Michael Malone. And then 5 minutes after that, it was, so where is Jokic going? Not surprised. The vultures are circling. Paul Pierce saying Nikola Jokic may ask for a trade this summer. Dozens of other national personalities screaming from the mountaintops that Nikola Jokic should go to LA and partner with his buddy Luka for the next golden age of Laker basketball. This is actually the next best thing. As much shock and as much as they'll act like they're angry about Michael Malone getting fired in Denver, they're deep down, they're happy. They're happy because here is another superstar that they can say should go to LA. They love it. But he's not, like, here's the thing. Nikola Jokic was not blindsided by this. I don't know who needs to hear it, but there is a 0% chance that Nikola Jokic found out when the rest of us did. And there is a 0.00001% chance that Nikola Jokic was told without the possibility of him being able to interject and keep Michael Malone from getting fired. So if anyone is basing their theory that Nikola Jokic is going to demand a trade and want to go play with Luka in LA because he didn't have a say over this or because he was blindsided for it, that's just not the right logic. Nikola Jokic absolutely found out before we all did. And Nikola Jokic knows as well as you and I do that if he were to even give some sort of an indication that this was not in the best interest of the basketball team, he could have stopped it. Nikola Jokic could have kept Michael Malone from getting fired. I am 100% sure about that. Now, even though the people who are trying to get Nikola Jokic to ask out of Denver are conveniently forgetting the fact that Nikola Jokic has said he wants to be to the Denver Nuggets what Tim Duncan was to the San Antonio Spurs, how he has been basically the anti-superstar where he doesn't demand things. He doesn't try to ask out. He doesn't hold his franchise over a barrel like a certain guy that currently calls LA home. Nikola Jokic is in many ways the opposite of the LeBrons, the Anthony Davises, the Jimmy Butlers, and all these guys. In fact, the European players as a whole are not that way. The closest anybody has come to being like LeBron and Kevin Durant and Anthony Davis and all these guys is Giannis with a little tiny comment in one New York Times article. That's the closest any of these European players have come to demanding trades. Nikola Jokic absolutely will not ask for a trade this summer. That is completely ridiculous. So your fantasy of Luka and Jokic together as of right now could be just as likely for Luka to not sign an extension in LA and come to Denver. How about I turn it on its head? How about that? While we're talking about how the Nuggets improve their roster, how about Jokic starts to become a little bit more chatty with his buddy and says, look, I don't want to leave Denver. I'm under contract. You're not. Why don't you ask out? So right now, both are equally likely. But what I will concede for the dozens of national personalities that are salivating like Pavlov's dog over the idea of Nikola Jokic not being on the Denver Nuggets, I will say that what responsibility falls on the shoulders of Josh Kroenke, you better not tempt fate. I think this organization has taken advantage of Nikola Jokic's patience and his willingness to go along with what the organization decides. And maybe the Michael Malone firing is another example of this. Right? Certainly, Nikola Jokic could have said something, could have put a stop to it, chose not to. Maybe he's just going with the flow, letting basketball people make basketball decisions, and he's worrying about playing. But if the Nuggets continue down this path, if they don't get this right, and I'm talking all of this, the GM, the head coach, any moves they make this summer, if they don't get all of this right, they will risk Nikola Jokic reaching a breaking point. And think about that sentence for a moment. That the Denver Nuggets could legitimately risk Nikola Jokic saying, I've had it, send me somewhere else. 3 months ago, a month ago, unfathomable. You could never possibly think that Nikola Jokic would be driven to a breaking point. So while others are identifying, the histrionics he was having on the bench the other night that many people are pointing out, and people saying that just Nikola Jokic has to be fed up, and all these things that they're pointing at, I still don't think we're at Nikola Jokic's breaking point, and I think it takes a lot to get him there, because I think that goes against every thing he wants his NBA career to be. But what I am tired of seeing is the Denver Nuggets taking advantage of that with their loyalty to the people around him. There is one player, one person in this organization that deserves undying loyalty, and it's Nikola Jokic. Nobody else does. Not Porter, not Gordon, not Malone, not Murray, not Booth. So it's preposterous right now to even bring up the idea. And I see it, right? If you're a struggling cable sports talk show, or you're some fledgling podcast, and you put a video of you saying Nikola Jokic should demand a trade from the Denver Nuggets, that's going to get you your clicks. And I understand it. And I'm not even vilifying it. I understand it. It's part of the sports media business. But they know as well as you and I do that Nikola Jokic is not built that way. And even as bad as the last couple of seasons have ended, and we don't even know exactly how this one is going to end, But no matter how it does, and couple that with what happened last year, we're still not, there's no way Nikola Jokic even gives the Nuggets an inkling that he may want to move. But they should not take advantage of his good nature. They should not take advantage of him wanting to just play basketball. They're screwing this up. That we can all agree on. They are screwing all of this up. And they need to fix it now. And I hope what happened yesterday is the first step towards that. I think that it's not enough. It's not enough to put in a new GM and head coach and everything will be hunky-dory and the Nuggets will be back on top. I don't believe that. Part of why they need to get the general manager position so right is because I think there are very difficult decisions that have to be made this offseason regarding players that are extremely popular or at least extremely well paid within the Nuggets organization. I don't think what they did yesterday is going far enough. And if Josh Kroenke disagrees with me and they run this roster back and next year ends poorly, then I'm gonna start to move over a little bit. Right? I'll start moving towards the maybe Nikola Jokic should contemplate going somewhere else. Because we know the guy wants to win. We know that drives him. So the longer the Denver Nuggets mess around, the closer they come to finding out. Right now is not the time. So sorry, Paul Pierce. Sorry, Ryan Russillo. Sorry, Laker fans. Like, he's not going to do it. Yet. I will concede that some of the things you're saying and making your case for why he should want to leave now, I'm saying if they keep happening and if they keep festering, then maybe I will be on your side. But I knew it was going to happen. The minute Michael Malone got fired, I knew the conversation would pivot almost immediately to where does Nikola Jokic go? Because they love that stuff. And to be honest, we love that stuff. We do. We just don't like it when it's somebody for the team we root for. But, I mean, could you imagine in a season where they were already given Luka and they're like, now this happens, now we can find Luka, his dynamic duo partner moving forward post LeBron? It's Jokic. Yeah, the Nuggets are screwing it up. And yeah, they're taking advantage of Nikola Jokic's good nature and his patience. I don't think his patience has run out, but why push it? 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Coming up this summer, something that I think you would be especially interested in if you have a son or a daughter that is interested in the sport of football. How about getting them coached by pro football players? Pro football camp returns to Colorado Springs this summer. Joining me now to discuss is Teddy Doman, who puts on this amazing camp every single year. Teddy, great to hear from you. How are you?
Hey, Ryan. Great to hear from you. I always love sharing about pro football camp every year. So thank you for allowing us on.
Yeah, and for those who may not know, tell us about kind of the impetus of pro football camp. What do you and Craig Doman look to accomplish with this camp?
Absolutely. So 20 years ago, God really put on our hearts to start a youth football camp that featured current and former NFL athletes actually teaching not only proper football skills, that would kind of seem obvious, right? But also teaching the character that it takes to be successful both on and off the field. And that camp now has been going on 20 years. So we like to say you want to learn from the pros. So pro football camp will be June 23rd, 24th, and 25th at John Venezia from 8 to 11:30 every morning, those 3 days. And then this past fall, we were approached by some professional women football players who have been coming to the camp for a number of years now. I don't know if it's been 6 or 7, you kind of lose track, but they've been helping at the pro football camp. And they came to us and said, you know what, given that flag now is a CHSAA sport, we'd really love to run a flag football camp featuring pro women. And gosh, we already have 15 professional women signed up to come teach girls 10 to 18 years old from June 9 through the 12th at John Venezia Community Park.
That's
so we're
awesome.
Really excited about that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
And
we'll
good
be
on you
following
for
the
adding it to the fold. I know that pro football camp in and of itself is quite a commitment, but throwing this into the mix as well, June 9th through the 12th, very cool to do. So we're sitting here on April 9th. So the early birds have missed their opportunity, but still obviously time to sign up. How is the best way to go about that?
The best way, all the details, everything will be on the website, www.profootballcamp.com, including the girls' pro flag football camp. So please go out there and register online, and we are going to be absolutely delighted to have a whole bunch of kids, 7 to 14, at the pro football camp, June 23rd, 24th, and 25th. And then looking so forward to really helping those girls that think that they might be interested in flag football, which is not only now a Colorado Springs High School Activities Association, a high school varsity sport, but it's also an Olympic sport, which is so exciting. And having those girls coached by pros June 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
And what were the age ranges for the girls again?
The girls are 10 to 18.
Okay.
So a little bit older than the pro football camp. And by the way, the pro football camp is boys and girls.
I was just going to make note of that. I was looking, there is some overlap. So if you have somebody that's in the 10 to 14 range, they would be eligible to go to both camps. So all the better.
Yeah. Exactly. 100%.
So, very cool. Teddy, it's awesome that you put this on, and we'll be talking more about it as we get a little bit closer, having some of the coaches on to talk about why this means so much to them. So I'm really looking forward to that. Anything that I may have missed that you want to get across while I have you right now today?
I just think we want to make sure people know that we do this as we're a nonprofit. We do this as a way to give back to the community. So this is all a service project. Many say it's our ministry. And we just want to really encourage people to come out. These athletes donate their time So these are the athletes who want to give back. They're the ones who want to pay back what has been given to them when they were kids. And they understand the power and the beauty and the wonder of, training youth at a very young age, giving them the proper tools that they need to be able to play a sport that, some of them have been blessed to be able to play now professionally, but I just think that understanding the heart of not only those of us who founded it, but also the athletes that are there coaching is just something that's very unique compared to any other, camp that's out there. And please check out online. We've got some free events. Let's say you don't have any kids in those age ranges, but you're like, man, I'd love to meet a pro athlete. We'll come to Meet the Pros at Back East Bar and Grill on June the 22nd, which is that Sunday before. We've got an event called Praise with the Pros, which is going to be on Tuesday, June 24th from 6 to 8:30, free and open to the public. And you can hear these athletes actually share their Christian testimonies in just a really fun, open environment. So just love the public to get involved. If you want to volunteer for camp, we can always use volunteers. Again, go to www.profootballcamp.com, click on the volunteer tab, and we'd love to have you join us. Lots to do.
Lots to do, but all of it super worth it. So profootballcamp.com is where you go to get more information, to sign up for all of these things. Teddy, thanks so much for your time today, but more importantly, thanks for what you do with Pro Football Camp and now adding to it with the Flag Football Camp June 9th through the 12th. Thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.
Hey, thank you, Ryan. Hope to see you out there.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
That is Teddy Doman, her husband, Craig, NFL agent, her son, Joe. Well, she has two sons that have gone to play professional football, but JoJo has played for the Indianapolis Colts, actually played against the Broncos a couple years ago. So my two sons have both been to Pro Football Camp, and they loved it. So highly recommend profootballcamp.com is where you go for that. And that June 9th through the 12th, that camp is pretty cool too for the young women ages, well, I guess they're girls 10, 11 years old, but 10 to 18 years old can sign up for that. Now, shifting gears a little bit here, we'll get back into the Nuggets because they do play tonight. I don't know how interested you were in Nuggets Kings tonight. I think you're a little bit more interested now. So we'll talk about expectations for this evening coming up. But on the Avs front, the Avs all of a sudden are far less interesting than the Denver Nuggets, which is actually a good thing because they're not in danger of missing the playoffs entirely, and they are not firing people this late in the season. But they also have 3 games left. They beat Vegas last night in a shootout. I'll talk more about that game later. But the big news today, Gabriel Landeskog officially assigned to Loveland. Now it's a conditioning assignment, which conditioning can mean a lot of different things. You can condition in practice. You can also condition in a game. Jared Bednar last night after the Avalanche win was asked whether maybe we want to look into getting some tickets for Friday night up in Loveland.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's doing better and getting close, so that is still an option.
I think it's just eating at Jared Bednar. It's just eating away at him. I think he wants, with every fiber of his being, to go. He's going to play. Maybe not in – I'm not talking about Loveland. I think he's like, we're going to have him back. He's going to play in the playoffs, guys. I think he wants so badly to say that. But I don't know if he's, a big believer in like the secret, like putting stuff out in the world. I think he's keeping it close to the vest. They've made it this far without being too committal on Gabriel Landeskog. Why change course now? But I can just listen to Jared Bednar. I think he might be a little bit tired of answering questions about Gabriel Landeskog, but I do think there's some excitement because of what Gabriel Landeskog means to the organization and to him, that relationship between the two of them. I think he really just wants to say, just lay it all out there. Yeah, well, we want him to play Friday night for the Eagles, and then we want him to join us on Monday, and he's going to be there for game 1 against Dallas, and he's going to be on the third line, and I think some part of Jared Bednar just wants to spill it all. But you can't. You got to wait. So I know that the Eagles made special avalanche-colored jerseys with Landeskog on the back. So the Eagles are going to get their money's worth out of the idea that Gabriel Landeskog may play. And I've said it. I think it would be a good idea. I know it would be cooler to see Gabriel Landeskog, preferably with, like a smoke machine going, a fog machine going, stepping out onto the ice in Dallas for game 1. Like the first time we've seen him play hockey since game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years ago. But I think the more practical way to go about it is if he's good enough to play in a game, play him in Loveland. I don't think the excitement will be tamped down too much if we see him make a rehab start on Friday in Loveland before he joins the Avs for the playoffs, which begin next week. So can't tell you whether you should go up to Loveland. Can't. Neither can Jared Bednar. But I'll put it this way, because Ray, who was with me out at Trainwreck the other night, he already had tickets. Get this. He already had tickets for tomorrow night's game. Not anything to do with Gabriel Landeskog, just dude's night out. How much did he luck out? Because those prices are going up, 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 up. So the Gabriel Landeskog officially in Loveland. He's on the team roster. He's on the website. They're printing jerseys to separate you from your money. Now it's just a matter of whether he plays on Friday night in Loveland. 719-247-1313. When we come back after the top of the hour, the first game of the rest of the Nuggets' lives are tonight. What to expect from a David Adelman coached Nuggets team. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Wednesday. Ryan Kaufman with you. Appreciate you tuning in. Whether you're listening or watching the show or a bit of both, at XTRA Sports 1300 on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. The number, if you would like to give your thoughts on what's going on with the Denver Nuggets or with the Colorado Avalanche. Slip them in at the end of the last hour. I'm here for your Avs opinions as well at 719-247-1313. Tonight, as Mark Bertinoli would say, pregame host of both the Avs and the Nuggets broadcasts that you can hear here on Extra Sports 1300. The Nuggets will play their first game without Michael Malone as their head coach in a while. Being the understatement that it came across as. David Adelman will coach the team tonight in Sacramento. First, the backdrop. The Nuggets come into play tonight in a four-way tie for the fourth seed in the Western Conference. So that's 4, 5, 6, and 7. All have the same records. The Nuggets technically are the 5 seed and would match up against the LA Clippers. But this is not, given what happened yesterday, I don't think this is about matchups as much in the moment. Right now, tonight, it's not about matchups and who they may or may not play. Job one for David Adelman, through whatever means he sees necessary, is to keep the Denver Nuggets out of the play-in. And any one of these 3 games they lose could cost them. I think the one with the most benefit to their chances and the most downside would be Friday, against Memphis. Just for the simple fact that Memphis is one of the teams that is essentially tied for the 4th seed in the West in terms of record. So obviously that one carries more weight than tonight or Sunday against Houston does. But if the Nuggets really want to avoid the play-in, they should just win all 3 of these games. Actually, let me back up a bit. If the Nuggets wanted to be safe and make sure they wouldn't be potentially in the play-in, they should have won any one of the last 4 games that they lost that have gotten us to where we're at today, with the Denver Nuggets getting ready to play in their first game without Michael Malone as their head coach in a very, very long time. That's kind of the whole deal here. Why Josh Kroenke felt like this was the right timing, as much as people thought that, and I'm not going to push back against that sentiment. If you feel like Michael Malone, for everything he's meant to the Nuggets, deserved a chance to fight to the bitter end and to see this season through, I'm not going to try and talk you out of that. And in some way, I agree with you. But listening to Josh Kroenke, even before I listened to him, when I was hypothesizing yesterday why Josh Kroenke did it now, and it just turned out that that's exactly why Josh Kroenke did it, I understand the reasoning for it. I understand. And the most important thing that he said in his interview with Vic Lombardi, which I'm sure is going to be played again tonight before the game. Game's on Altitude TV tonight, right? Or is it just on national? Anyway, it's here on Extra Sports 1300. I could tell you that much, which is obviously the most important thing. Said winning was masking a lot of our issues. And he couldn't risk that happening again. That this team takes care of business in some form or fashion, or some combination of these games, they get enough wins to go into the playoffs. They get a favorable matchup in round one, let's say, like the one that they have right now in the Clippers, which would be the matchup if the season ended today. They win that. Then what? If they lose in the second round, is that a good time? Do you have to wait for the Nuggets to collapse in game 7 in the second round to be able to fire? What if you get such a good path that you don't see your demise until the Western Conference Finals? Let's say you get LA, the Clippers, and then you get Houston, a team really talented, but probably isn't ready for this stage yet, and I think can be vulnerable even as the 2 seed. You beat those two teams, there's no way you can fire Michael Malone if you make a Western Conference Finals appearance. So I understand why Josh Kroenke made the move. Did Michael Malone deserve better? I think that that's a valid argument. But the Nuggets had made up their mind that it was in the best interest of the team to remove the toxicity that had existed for a while. This is not a this year thing. This is not a last offseason and this year thing. This has permeated throughout the Denver Nuggets since Calvin Booth took over for Tim Connolly. These two were never on the same page. And it just got worse and worse and worse. So, again, back to the task at hand. Nuggets need to do some winning over these last 3 games to avoid the play-in and the potential of their season being over before the real playoffs even begin. So what does David Adelman do tonight in order to make that happen? I don't think that David Adelman has a real shot at this job. I'll just say it at the outset. I don't think he has a real shot at this job. I think Michael Malone's staff is probably going to follow Michael Malone once the season is over. Right? Once they've hired a new GM who hires his coach, all these other, probably all of Malone's assistants are going to be gone, or at least most of them. That's my theory, my prediction. So I don't know if David Adelman can win himself this job short of winning a title. And we'll put that caveat in there, I guess, every time we bring it up. But I think you know as well as I do that when they made the decision they made yesterday, I think it was also kind of waving the white flag that it's not going to happen. Okay, you want to know the list? I made the list. Where's the list? Where'd it go? I have the list. Here are teams that fired their coaches mid-season. We'll find out with Memphis, right along with the Denver Nuggets. Just last year, Milwaukee Bucks fired Adrian Griffin. Bucks got bounced in the first round. Kings, we'll also find out this year. Funny enough, not ha-ha funny, but funny enough, Mike Brown and Michael Malone are on this list multiple times. A dubious honor if I've ever seen. But you go back to 2020, 2021, David Fizdale, famous for take that for data and then smacking the microphone. He was fired early in the Knicks season, and the Knicks never recovered. Didn't make the playoffs. So Bucks bounced in the first round. Knicks in 2020, 2021 missed the playoffs. Cavs, after they fired Tyronn Lue after an 0-6 start, only won 19 games, missed the playoffs. The Bulls fired Fred Hoiberg in 2017. They did not make the playoffs. Earl Watson was fired by the Suns in 2017. They only won 21 games under Jay Triano. Kings, when they fired Michael Malone, did not make the playoffs. They finished with 29 wins. When the Lakers fired Mike Brown, they made the playoffs, bounced in the first round. Blazers fired Nate McMillan in the 2011 season. They did not make the playoffs that year. Timberwolves, when they fired Randy Whitman, did not make the playoffs. Bulls, when they fired Scott Skiles, did not make the playoffs. Magic, when they fired Johnny Davis, did not make the playoffs that year. And the Golden State Warriors, when they fired Eric Musselman way back in 2023 or 2003. No, Musselman was after the season. So that's it. Notice the theme here. Not a single one of these teams that fired their coach in season, let alone with 3 games left, recovered to even get out of the first round. The only rebuttal to that within reason is through Nikola Jokic, all things are possible. Well, buckle up and let's find out. But history will tell you that it does not end with a ticker tape parade for teams that fire their coach in the middle of the season or at any point in the season, and there is a reason for that, because those organizations are broken and you cannot be put back together in just a few days' time. So, in summation, my hopes for David Adelman completely turning this thing around and delivering the Nuggets their second title in 3 years is not very high. So, what can we expect from David Adelman? I legitimately do not know. I can tell you that the Nuggets offense, which is give it to number 15 and let him decide what to do with the ball, that will remain intact because David Adelman is basically the offensive coordinator of the Denver Nuggets. What I am fascinated to see is what happens with these Jalen Pickett v. Russell Westbrook, Zeke Naji v. DeAndre Jordan. Does David Adelman have different ideas when it comes to the rotations that Michael Malone had and whether he is more on board with the young guys? Or, better yet, has Josh Kroenke said anything to David Adelman about what he would prefer to see down the stretch? I'll put it that way. Will we see Jalen Pickett more than we see Russell Westbrook? Will we see Zeke Naji more than we see DeAndre Jordan? My hunch is that if the edict above everything else is to win as many of these 3 games as you possibly can to keep the Nuggets out of the play-in, my guess is you will see more Russell Westbrook than Jalen Pickett. You will see more DeAndre Jordan than Zeke Naji. So I really don't think that we're going to be watching the Denver Nuggets tonight and Friday against Memphis and Sunday against Houston and when the playoffs roll around and go, oh my gosh, this is completely different. I would be quite surprised if all of a sudden we see these young players getting more time under David Adelman than they got under Michael Malone. Kind of think that Malone and his staff were of the same mind when it comes to this. But I'll still be watching to find out. And one thing that you should see more than anything else, everything else I have a hunch about, I have a theory about. One thing that absolutely we better see from the Denver Nuggets tonight: effort. We should see a team, after everything that has transpired over the last week, culminating with the firing of their head coach and their general manager. One thing that we should not be saying when we reconvene or when we're on social media tonight tweeting about the game, we should not be saying, man, the Nuggets look flat. We should not see the Sacramento Kings dominate the glass. If nothing else tonight, if nothing else changes, the one thing that I think should be expected is that the Nuggets will give their best effort for 4 quarters. And maybe even a borderline inspired effort. And that has nothing to do with, David Adelman being the right guy for the job. This is professional pride because the players have a hand in this. Okay, yes, more of the blame goes on Calvin Booth and Michael Malone, but all of these players should take some accountability. How could you not? I mean, you'd have to be Russell Westbrook to not take accountability for what has happened over the past week. So the most stunning thing tonight will be if the Nuggets look from an effort perspective as like they have for the past week. That'd be stunning. Although it would give me every bit of ammunition I need to continue on my, some may call it a crusade, to pretty much tear down this entire team around Nikola Jokic and rebuild it. Nuggets and Kings, late one tonight, 8 o'clock. What are your expectations for tonight? 719-247-1313. Coming up next. So I've already said I don't think that David Adelman's getting this job. I don't think he should get this job. Who should? I have a few ideas. I'll share them with you next on Extra Sports 1300. Frontline to Field Foundation, a nonprofit started by former pro pitcher Jason Stanford to help individuals in high-stress, high-risk professions like military personnel, veterans, and first responders, helping them navigate the challenges of mental health. They're having a baseball camp for ages 7 to 12 in Peyton on the 12th and 13th as this Saturday and Sunday. If you go to our social media accounts, you will see a post for it, or you could just search for Frontline to Field Foundation on Facebook. Had Jason on the show yesterday. Very cool organization that he's creating and trying to get off the ground, and this is one of their first big events. So if you could support. I got this, and I mentioned this yesterday, but I got this from, I always get these emails, solicitations like, use our hypothetical odds for things. And I never do, except now. The odds, hypothetical odds for the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. David Adelman is the favorite at 4-1. Chris Quinn, the assistant coach, I don't think he's associated in his name, of the Heat, is 6-1. James Borrego, he's with the Pelicans now, used to coach the Hornets. He's 6.5-1. Some of the more wild names on this list: Nate Oates, the Alabama coach, and Dan Hurley from UConn. Taylor Jenkins, the recently fired Grizzlies head coach, is also on here. And for reasons that I cannot and will not understand, Doc Rivers at 18-1 to be the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. I will tell you that there is an archetype, a very specific archetype that the Denver Nuggets should be most interested in. It is going to be very difficult for them to bring in somebody that can equal the resume of Michael Malone, right? Because he's got that ring. And as long as he's got that ring, he trumps a lot of coaches in and out of the NBA. And that's why earlier in the show, I said, if you want to equate what the Nuggets have done to what the Avalanche have done, look at letting Michael Malone and Calvin Booth go like Chris McFarland replacing the goalie room. Like, that absolutely had to happen before anything else could happen. That was not sustainable. That could not continue, that situation. Calvin Booth and Michael Malone, like it or not, are Eustace Onanen and Alexander Georgiev. And I'll let you decide which one is which. But that would be the comparison. The Mikko Rantanen deal, that comes later. And when Mackenzie Blackwood came in, all you said was that there were some numbers, some things with him where you're like, maybe he could be really good. Right? He hadn't won anything. Still hasn't played in a playoff game yet. But it was the amount of shots that he had to suffer through playing for the terrible Sharks. And you thought with more help around him, he may be able to make it work. And guess what? He's been very, very good. And that's going to have to kind of be the thing with the Nuggets here. You're going to have to look at who they hire, most likely. Again, I will continue to push my agenda of the Bob Myers, Steve Kerr, doubling down, making that all happen. I think that the Nuggets should absolutely swing for the fences, and I can't think of a bigger swing than that. And having Bob Myers as their GM would certainly help in some way. So that's why I'll hold up as like the best case scenario. But if we're going to then look at anything that's not that, you're going to look at the next head coach and decide, because of what you've seen elsewhere with the best player in the world now on his team, could that get the most out of this coach? But the specific archetype that I think that the Denver Nuggets should be looking for is someone who has been a head coach before. You may call them retreads. I am not of the mind that the Denver Nuggets should be in the business of finding the next JJ Redick. Although I say that, and coincidentally, the next JJ Redick is somebody that used to be a head coach, is Steve Nash. He's hosting the pod with LeBron now. So if Steve Nash is the next JJ Redick, I suppose he would fit the bill for what I think the Nuggets should be looking for. I don't think that the Nuggets should be looking in the direction of a coach that's getting his first opportunity. And you're gonna see some. I've already seen Richard Jefferson's name out there. I have seen Becky Hammond's name thrown out there. I have seen other names in the deep recesses of the internet. This is too big of a job, too important of a job to leave in the hands of somebody that you think maybe if you put him in the right situation, he'll flourish with no background, nothing to fall on. Right? You look at some of the names, and I'm not saying I endorse any of these people, but James Borrego, okay, would be a legitimate candidate because he has head coaching experience. Now, you'd have to look at that experience and say, is it worth it? And that's what they will find out. But James Borrego, Taylor Jenkins, Dave Yeager, who's an assistant in Milwaukee, Wes Unseld, who has ties to the Denver Nuggets, obviously was an assistant under Michael Malone. I don't know how Wes Unseld feels about this whole Michael Malone getting fired, but he would fit that because he has a spell as an NBA head coach. I think that's the direction where the Denver Nuggets need to look. And you may groan and say that's a retread. What if it's Sean Payton's a retread? Right? So it's only a retread if you hate the hire. Let's be real about it. Because Sean Payton's a retread. Andy Reid, when the Chiefs hired him, was a retread. But I think this is a big-time job. This is an important job because Nikola Jokic is clearly unhappy. And the longer you mess around and don't get this right and get him back to championship contention, the more you run the risk of him actually becoming the one thing you thought he could never become, which is your typical NBA superstar. Demanding things, demanding trades. You don't want Jokic to turn into that guy. That's why you love Nikola Jokic, because he's not that guy. Don't turn him into that guy by getting this thing wrong because you think it might be cute to follow the Lakers because they've started this new cool trend of bringing in former First Take panelists. And we don't even know if JJ Redick's going to ultimately work out in LA. Okay? LA hasn't even gotten to the point that they got with Darvin Ham. So I like a lot of what I see with JJ Redick. I also think he was given, Luka Doncic on a silver platter. So it's kind of, we're at the point, how can JJ Redick actually screw this up? But that's neither here nor there. The Nuggets shouldn't be looking for the next JJ Redick. They should be looking for someone that can go in there and say, I've done this before. At least I've been a head coach. I've managed egos. I've worked with the front office. That's got to be one of the first things that the Nuggets ask in the job interview, right? How'd you get along with your former GM? because we had a bad experience with this. And I would think the next general manager would be a part of that interviewing process. I'll throw out a name from yesteryear that I think may work really well in this spot. How about a Jeff Van Gundy? I know, may not quite do it for you. But Jeff Van Gundy has managed egos. He's worked with front offices. He's had big boy jobs in New York. He is currently as well regarded of a current assistant coach as we have in the NBA. He has been a part of Boston, and now he's with LA. He is a defensive-minded coach. I don't think that the Nuggets need to go away from who Michael Malone was in that regard. I still think getting a coach with a mind for defense would be a good idea. How about somebody like a Jeff Van Gundy? A grown-up for that position, I think would fit. But that's the vein where, and look, they should cast a wide net. And I say it because we've had a lot of practice with the Denver Broncos looking for head coaches. Cast as wide of a net as you want. If you want to make headlines because you're talking to Stephen A. Smith to be your next head coach, well, that actually may be a bridge too far. But cast as wide a net as you would like. Okay? But serious candidates need to be ones with NBA head coach on their resume. There is only one person that I can think of that they could consider, and I wouldn't think it's too crazy to consider this, that does not have NBA head coach on his resume. Micah Nori. Micah Nori, who is an assistant under Chris Finch in Minnesota. Because even though Nikola Jokic, I don't think has been asking to be placated, this would placate him, right? He's tight with Micah Nori. That would be a nice olive branch to extend to Nikola Jokic. We're sorry for messing this up. We know that with you, it's nearly impossible to screw this up, and yet we did. Here is somebody that you like very much. And I don't want to say that's the only reason for it. Micah Nori is one of the best assistants in the NBA. He's very well thought of. So it's not like you're just getting one of his brothers to be the head coach. I mean, it's not completely placating. It's not the co-host of Nikola Jokic's podcast that you're making the head coach. But this is somebody that he has a connection with, that hasn't gotten an opportunity to be a head coach, but is well regarded as an assistant. Micah Nori is the only name I can think of that I could consider amongst a slew of coaches that have been head coaches before. I don't want to do the college thing. If I'm the Nuggets, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go the Dan Hurley route. I don't want to poach Todd Golden from Gainesville. I don't want to bring in Nate Oates. I'm not messing with college. And unless it's Micah Nori, I'm not messing with anybody that hasn't been an NBA head coach before. Because I think actually the more important job is the general manager job. Okay, I can sacrifice a little bit of the shock and awe factor when it comes to the head coach if they land a legit general manager. That's what this team needs more than anything else. They need somebody to come in to have no ties to Michael Porter or Jamal Murray or Christian Brown or any of the young guys on the bench, and just look at it for what it is and say, this is what we need to do. And if he can move either Jamal Murray or Michael Porter, and if he comes in and says, I can get those contracts, at least one of those contracts off the books, they become one of the front runners. While, of course, addressing team needs. But flexibility, let's be honest, is a part of the equation here. The Nuggets' inability to be able to assess where they're at and go out and make a move, I think, has hampered them. But general manager is the more important gig for me. And I can't pretend to know all of these, personnel guys hiding in all of these front offices across the NBA. But I'm saying you got to get that right. First of all. And if you get that right, if you get somebody that can really get in there to this roster and make the tough decisions that need to be made, then I don't think you need to grab headlines with who you hire as a head coach. I know you've thought about it. What are a few of the names you're looking at as coach? GM is tough, obviously, but head coach, plenty of them. Potential candidates, who would you like the Nuggets to look at as the successor, ultimately, to Michael Malone? 719-247-1313 is the number. Back after this. 7-13-13 is the number if you'd like to give your thoughts on the firing of Michael Malone. The latest question I have posed: who would you put at the top of your wish list to be the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets? It's been a while since we've had this conversation. Not that I want to reminisce about the Brian Shaw days, but it has been a while since the Denver Nuggets have needed a new head coach. Take some of your thoughts at 719-247-1313. From the 719, Sam Cassell. Cassell right now is an assistant with Boston. Also throwing this out, Mark Few. Texter says, think he has been around Olympics and would be very prepared, and he has had success against highly rated D1 schools. Also has developed a lot of pros from his time at Gonzaga, including, by the way, Julian Strother. So neither of those two would fit the type of coach I think that the Nuggets should target above all others, which is someone who has NBA head coaching experience. But if you do look let's say you don't have any good candidates, or the candidates that you pursue rebuff you. Although I don't see that happening, because I think this is one of the better jobs that have opened up in the NBA in wow. I'm even trying to think of the last job opening that was this good. I mean, I guess in the short term, it would be Milwaukee, right? When they moved on from Mike Budenholzer. But before that, I mean, I don't think, with everything that comes along with coaching LeBron, I don't think that any of the jobs that came open when LeBron was at whatever city he was in were a better job than this. I mean, not only do you get the best player in the world, you get the best player in the world who is as low maintenance as they could possibly be. And he's a complete and utter mismatch every single night. There's one matchup that you know you will win every single night. I think Milwaukee would be close. I think this is a better job. I do. But that would be a similar one. So I don't expect the Nuggets to get rebuffed by too many candidates. But Sam Cassell, if you went assistant route, would certainly be near the top of the list. I want to focus on the Mark Few one, because I think that's interesting. A lot of people would say, obviously, Dan Hurley. But just the idea of a Mark Few or a Dan Hurley. If one of the Nuggets' biggest problems is that the guy who used to have the gig did not want to play young players and did not want to develop young talent, couldn't the argument be made that somebody coming from the college ranks could be a fit? It wouldn't be my preference. And I'm not advocating for that, but I think there's an argument. And Mark Few has some things going for him, like the texter is saying. He's been an assistant coach with Team USA this whole time. And that's why I wonder about tonight. And I wonder about David Adelman, whether he has it in his own mind or Josh Kroenke is maybe telling him what he would like to see. I wonder what the role of the young players will be tonight. Now, no Jamal Murray. He's out again. But I wonder if Josh Kroenke is more on Team Booth than people would believe. I think there's this belief out there that, Michael Malone is some kind of collateral damage in all of this, or both kids are fighting, so you're going to put them both in timeout. That kind of a thing. I think Josh Kroenke saw what Calvin Booth's vision was. And I think he endorsed it. So would it stand to reason that Josh Kroenke would be very interested in having these young players like Peyton Watson, Julian Strother play? Jalen Pickett, Deron Holmes next year. Could Josh Kroenke want a coach that is willing to develop these guys? And wouldn't the type of coach that would be most amenable to that idea be a Dan Hurley, a Mark Few, a Nate Oates? Although I don't want to put Nate Oates in there. That feels weird. Dan Hurley, because he just interviewed for an NBA job, and Mark Few. If this doesn't pry if one of the better jobs to come open in recent NBA history with Nikola Jokic doesn't get Mark Few to leave Spokane, then nothing ever will. Then if we hear that the Denver Nuggets are interested in Mark Few and he turns them down, then that's it. It's over. Mark Few is never leaving Gonzaga. I think I wouldn't go that direction. But if Josh Kroenke assesses this situation and comes down more on the side of Calvin Booth when it comes to Russ or Jalen Pickett, DeAndre Jordan or Zeke Naji, I think a coach coming out of the college game would be very comfortable with investing in these younger players. From the 575, is Budenholzer available? I've been so out of it on the Phoenix Suns. Yes, okay. Just making sure Mike Budenholzer is not currently available, but stay tuned. The Phoenix Suns have been eliminated from even the play-in. They will probably trade Kevin Durant this offseason. I don't know that Mike Budenholzer is long for that job. In fact, somebody asked Grayson Allen about it yesterday because everyone was talking about the Nuggets firing Michael Malone. Somebody asked him about Mike Budenholzer and his future there. So the answer to your question is no, but stay tuned. And would that be somebody? It certainly fit what I'm looking for. I do look at what Milwaukee did and say that was a little bit of a rash decision to fire Mike Budenholzer when they did. I think if he is let go by Phoenix, I think he would have have to be on the inner sanctum. I don't know, the upper echelon, near the top of the list. However, the Nuggets are going to group this thing up. I think that Mike Budenholzer is somebody that you give very serious consideration to. I don't know if he'd be the favorite, and he'd certainly be an example of somebody that a lot of Nuggets fans will roll their eyes. Really? They fired Moach. They fired Michael Malone so they could hire Mike Budenholzer. It's not going to win over a lot of people. But I do think that the Nuggets need to be a bit risk adverse here. Take more of your thoughts on who do you like to see as the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets in just a little bit. And those of you who have not chimed in yet, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, do something a little bit different with what's driving the show. I'll tell you what hasn't been driving the show, what's been going on in Colorado sports that doesn't pertain to the Denver Nuggets. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you. Appreciate you dropping by. If you'd like to interact with the program, you could do so by calling or texting 719-247-1313. As you might imagine, the Denver Nuggets have been dominating the program today, and I think rightly so. But there are other things going on in our neck of the sports woods. So let's do a little something different with what's driving the show before we get right back into the Nuggets conversation. Here are the three stories that aren't driving the show, but any other day could be. All right, little hockey and a little baseball. Here's story number one.
Coyle, right-handed shot, again at center ice, right down the middle, Coyle, holding, he scores! Oh, Coyle rules! And Colorado gets the 2 points.
Connor McGahee on the Altitude Sports Radio Network, as heard right here on Extra Sports 1300. The Avs played last night, and they won a game in a shootout against the Vegas Golden Knights. But I have a very hard time making any grand proclamations out of that game. The Colorado Avalanche right now are a team that is having a lot of trouble getting their effort level up and maintaining it, which is a similar problem to what the Nuggets have, except the difference is the Colorado Avalanche's playoff fate has been pretty well cemented. You don't love what's going on with the Colorado Avalanche right now, but I think there's a level of understanding, and certainly I don't think there should be a panic level. So I'll keep, to stay consistent, yes, in many ways, beating the Vegas Golden Knights would be a significant win. But again, I don't know that if I still saw an Avalanche team that was having some problems getting their compete level up. They had one spurt in the game where in the second period where Valeri Nichushkin scored a goal, and shortly thereafter, Jimmy VC scored his first goal as an Av. I loved his quote after the game. I couldn't say that I was a member of the Avalanche and never score a goal. So there's fits and spurts. One thing that was consistently good all night was Scott Wedgwood. He was really good. And if I'm on Vegas Sports Talk Radio, I'm saying that Vegas got goalied last night. I thought that Scott Wedgwood was terrific and saved the Avs bacon on numerous occasions. Not going to panic after any losses. Certainly not going to beat my chest and say, watch out for the Avs win the Stanley Cup during this stretch, because I just don't think it's them. I don't think the team that's going to show up in Dallas for game one is the team we saw last night. I think that the team that arrives in Dallas in a few days is going to have their compete level at a high point. I think they're going to be buzzing. I think they're going to be flying around. I think the execution is going to be much better. They're just trying to get to the finish line without injuring themselves. So, hey, if you could pick up a win against a team like Vegas while you're at it, all the better. But the Avs really need the regular season to be over. Now, Story number 2, speaking of how different the Avs may look come playoff time.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's doing better and getting close, so that is still an option.
Jared Bednar last night asked about Gabriel Landeskog, who today was officially assigned to the Colorado Eagles up in Loveland for a conditioning assignment. The vagueness is intentional from all parties involved because the Avs, if Gabriel Landeskog does not play, and everyone's targeting Friday night, right? Friday night, Eagles at home. The Eagles are selling Landeskog Eagles jerseys. It is a frenzy up there north of Denver right now. But if Gabriel Landeskog doesn't play on Friday, no promises were broken. Because Gabriel Landeskog conditioned today in Loveland. He skated. He practiced. That's conditioning. So the same sport that brings you only upper and lower body injuries brings you conditioning assignment. There is no promises that Gabriel Landeskog is going to play a rehab game essentially in Loveland. I think it would be good if he did. But the Avs have, to this point, not put any pressure on Gabriel Landeskog, have not promised anything. And so why stop now when you're almost at the finish line? So Landeskog is up in Loveland. He wore Eagles gear today. So there technically is something called a Gabriel Landeskog Colorado Eagles jersey. So go ahead and buy those if you see fit. Don't know if he's playing on Friday. And because that is a completely unsatisfactory topic, how about I tell you where I think Gabriel Landeskog will or should fit in once the playoffs begin. So I say you put Jonathan Drouin and Marty Necas. This is also assuming health. Avs got to get a couple of guys back, but let's assume health for now. Drouin, Necas, McKinnon on the top line. Then I would go Brock Nelson as the second line center. I would put Valeri Nichushkin on one wing, and I would put Arturi Lehkonen on the other. Side note, Arturi Lehkonen had an awful night last night. That dude had 3 or 4 golden opportunities to score a goal and got none, including a breakaway where he completely missed the net. Arturi Lehkonen was the anti-Scott Wedgwood last night. He was pretty bad all game long. Wedgwood was fantastic all game long. Anyway, Lehkonen, Nelson, Nichushkin as your second line. You put Gabriel Landeskog on the third line that is centered by Charlie Coyle, and I think you're going to need a little bit more skill on that line with working Gabriel Landeskog back. I think that you make Ross Colton the other winger on that third line. And then I think you go with Jack Drury centering a line with Logan O'Connor and Yoel Kiviranta, with the most noticeable name I omitted being Miles Wood. And then that way, if I think the most, not that I'm betting on him to stumble, but the most likely player that as we move through the postseason that I could see maybe not quite holding up his end of the bargain would probably be Drouin. Now you can move, and if Landeskog looks pretty good, you could put Landeskog and McKinnon back together again. And wouldn't that tug at the heartstrings? And then I think you could move Drouin down to the third line and then replace Colton, depending on how his form is, with Miles Wood. That's how I would start if I was Jared Bednar. Whenever that first game is that Gabriel Landeskog is 100% ready to play, That's how I put the lines. But Gabriel Landeskog, can we say at least he's one step closer to returning? I think that's a fair characterization. They want to keep his fitness level up without the ability to play him in games. Send him to the Eagles. I think he's a step closer. Avs with 3 games left, just like the Nuggets, coincidentally, before the end of the regular season. And for story number 3, this from Rockies television.
Lays down a bunt, and that's thrown up the right field line. Bean reaches Farmer to third. We'll have to stop there. And that's one of the elements this kid brings. And that's a team at bat right there because of the deficit.
Zach Veen, one of the Rockies' top prospects, just one game after another one of their top prospects, Chase Dollander, made his major league debut. Zach Veen plays last night for the Rockies, and I don't know what the future holds for Zach Veen. I lament the organization that he has found himself in, and I feel bad for him. Hopefully he can rise up and overcome being a Colorado Rocky. But this dude arrived with the Rockies in the best way possible. Did you see what he came to the ballpark wearing? Like, that dude is all vibes. In the absence of Charlie Blackmon, Zach Veen might take up that mantle as being the big vibes guy. And then he went out. I love that. I love that dude laid down a bunt. And with 2 outs, like, that dude just didn't care. He saw an opportunity to get on base and he took it. I think that was much like Dollander on Sunday, where I thought that he showed some resiliency after he got touched up for a home run, came back, ended up getting a big strikeout at the end of the first inning. Like, I just want to see a guy go up there and compete. And Zach Veen competed. He laid down a bunt, busted his butt down the first base line, and because of an errant throw, probably out of shock, Milwaukee could not have expected a bunt in that situation. They threw it away, and he took second base. But as you heard Drew Goodman say there, the Rockies were losing. Zach Veen back in the lineup tonight, hitting 9th for the Rockies in Game 2 of their series with the Milwaukee Brewers. So there you go. The 3 stories that, can we say, would be driving the show if we weren't talking about the Denver Nuggets, which continues to be the biggest story going right now. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show, or your thoughts on who should take over for Michael Malone as the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. Never too early to start the process, right? Isn't that kind of part of Josh Kroenke's calculation here? Get a head start? Let's help him get a head start next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. I'm watching the next general manager of the Denver Nuggets, Bob Myers, on the NBA countdown set, talking about Michael Malone getting fired. Interesting. Very interesting. You know, and what's also going to be interesting with this GM search is that if it's not Bob Myers, most people aren't going to know who the hell the Nuggets hired. Did anybody know who Tim Connolly was? Did many people know who Calvin Booth was? Other than, oh yeah, he was Tim Connolly's assistant. There's a lot of, with coaches, we are all very opinionated. These guys have been out front and center. They have coached. They, you recognize who they are. You know who these people are, so you feel strongly about it. With general managers, I'll just go back to, Joe Sakic handing the reins over to Chris McFarland. Everyone just kind of went, okay, we trust Joe Sakic. I don't think there was a ton of opinion one way or another whether Chris McFarland was a great hire. The trust was put into Joe Sakic that he knows. And if he had this guy as his number two, he must have some talent. But we just saw in Denver, it doesn't always work out. And I remember when Tim Connolly took the job in Minnesota, I said there's something to be said for the intellectual capital taking a bit of a hit. That just because Tim Connolly picked Calvin Booth does not mean Calvin Booth has the ability to take assistant off of his title and be successful. And that's what turned out to be the case. Now, how bad he was is up to a little bit of debate. I mean, the guy did bring in Bruce Brown, that everybody was so sad when he left. I think there are some, he did draft Christian Brown. Yeah. Did draft Peyton Watson. I think a lot of people still like Peyton Watson. He wasn't good enough to keep his job. And it's the same with Michael Malone. If we start with the reason for all of this is the bickering, is the toxicity and the relationship between those two. And Bob Myers was just talking about this on ESPN. If you're not winning, you got to be good at something else. And it's kind of the other way here. It's not the winning that's the issue, although he's not winning lately. Issue is if you're getting into it with your general manager and you're creating this awful environment for people to be in because you can't just bear the thought of playing Jalen Pickett over Russell Westbrook, then you better do something else. You better win. So Calvin Booth, he's bickering with Michael Malone. Well, you better have someone you bring in hit. And I don't know who picked who here, but Dario Saric, I think I have seen him in an actual basketball uniform once. Every other time I see Dario Saric, he was in a warm-up. I think the Nuggets might have even tweeted out, "Happy birthday, Dario Saric," and he was in a warm-up. Because there just aren't enough photos on file of Dario Saric playing basketball. Russell Westbrook has gone Russell Westbrook over the last week. Jalen Pickett just had the turnover the other night, and he's shown you a ton of stuff to make you go, yeah, he's definitely the point guard of the future. So if you're going to bicker, if you're going to make everybody's lives miserable because you guys are fighting all the time, you better be doing something else well. And what it came down to is neither Calvin Booth nor Michael Malone were doing their respective jobs good enough to overcome all of this other nonsense that was going on between the two of them. But back to the GM hire. George Payton, if you recall, I think a lot of people looked at skill sets and looked at where he came from. And I think it's going to be the same thing if the Nuggets do not land somebody like a Bob Myers, or because we're just throwing everything out there, Tim Connolly walks back through that door. Among the ownership change, he may not want to, A-Rod, when he had control of the team for like 2 seconds, let it leak out that he was looking to slash payroll. Tim Connolly may be like, yeah, I don't want to be here. I don't know what his contract situation is, but look, if it's not Tim Connolly, if it's not Bob Myers, and if it's not Masai Ujiri, most people are not going to know who these front office personnel are, and that's okay. But you look for what are they best at. George Payton came from a good organization that won a lot of games, maybe not the game, but Minnesota has won a lot of games over the years, and he was known as a very good draft guy. Broncos had wasted so many of their draft picks. And what did George Payton become? A very good draft guy that was terrible at assessing pro personnel, Russell Wilson. And now that he's got someone in Sean Payton that can help him on the pro personnel side, now we're seeing George Payton. I think we're getting ready to see a draft that we're going to say that George Payton did very well, because he's already done well in drafts, and this is all he needs to worry about anymore, because Sean Payton's got the pro side of it. So that will be the big question with the general manager. What do you want the GM to be able to do? What skill set would you like him to have? What organizations could this person come from where you're like, I like that? That remains to be seen. But as far as the coaches go, you know a lot of these names. You've seen them. And so we have more opinions. It's natural. Speaking of, let's get to a couple of your thoughts. From the 719, Todd Golden. Again, I'm not in love with the college coach idea. And if you told me I have to pick a college coach to throw in the mix, Todd Golden would be 1, 2, 3, at best fourth. At best fourth. Okay, I'll tell you 3 college coaches that if you told me I had to include one that I would pick before Todd Golden, I would pick Mark Few, who you suggested earlier. I would pick Kelvin Sampson and Dan Hurley. All before I would consider Todd Golden. And I don't even like the idea of plucking a coach from the college ranks. If you told me I had to, I would put those 3 over Todd Golden. Kudos to him and his Gators for watching Houston not be able to get a shot off in the last possession of the game. Like, credit to him for that. But yeah, I'm not entrusting Todd Golden with the greatest player in the history of the franchise and the best player in the world. What about Kelvin Sampson? He's been an assistant in the NBA. If we had to include one, how about him? Let's see. From the 719, Grant Hill should ditch his Team USA gig and start coaching. That would not be the only gig he would have to ditch. It would have to be his TNT gig as well. Maybe, but not with the Denver Nuggets. Again, we can't lose sight of how good this job is, so there's no reason to settle. And also how important this job is. I don't even know that I love Grant Hill as the guy who runs USA basketball. There have been, in his short tenure, some questionable decisions on Grant Hill's part. I don't know that necessarily in a new line of work, I can't believe that he would be. Go try that in Charlotte. Maybe. But not in Denver. And I certainly, not that you brought it up, but certainly when it comes to Grant Hill leaving Team USA to take the GM job with the Denver Nuggets, no thank you. No thank you. I think that he, again, could only pick the best American basketball players in the world and still missed on some guys. So I'm not putting it in Grant Hill's hands to figure out this mess with Michael Porter and Jamal Murray on massive max extension deals here. Alex says, what if the Nuggets tried to get Chauncey Billups out of Portland? Chauncey Billups checks the box of head coaching experience at the NBA level. I certainly think you see what he is doing in Portland this season. That team has been playing for him this entire time. They're playing hard for him. They were just on a huge winning streak not that long ago. I have heard hearsay, innuendo that things, if that were to be a scenario, that things would have to be a bit patched up. They did trade Chauncey Billups twice in his career. They could have brought him in to be something else. They could have brought him in instead of elevating Calvin Booth. So I think that Chauncey Billups probably checks a few boxes for what I would be looking for the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. I don't know if Denver is a likely destination for Chauncey Billups if he were to trade up from Portland. We'll say that. Let's see. To the Avs part of this, Brett, and I'll read both of these texts together because they're kind of the same topic and same opinion. Brett says you can tug on the heartstrings or you can win hockey games regarding Gabriel Landeskog rejoining the team. And this one from the 719, I think you know how this Landeskog charade shakes out. Sell, and sell. What can sell? Am I the only one who remembers Peter Forsberg? And this is where we have to be careful. Because I think you're both right. You're both right that if we have learned nothing from Colorado sports over the last calendar year, whether it be the Broncos, the Avalanche, or the Nuggets, you cannot bring your feelings into it. You have to look at this in a cold and calculated way. But there is also a human element to adding Gabriel Landeskog back to the team. And that's why I say making Gabriel Landeskog anything more than a third line winger is right out of the gate would be a mistake. Because I think Jared Bednar has to protect. I think what he has to balance here is, and I'll use Josh Kroenke's words from yesterday when he was talking about this season. He has to try and squeeze as much juice out of this as he can with Gabriel Landeskog, right? You know that the team is going to be buzzing and going to love to have their captain back out on the ice. That is going to be an emotional boost. And at this time of the year, you look for every little emotional, tactical advantage that you can get. So trying to get all the benefit of Gabriel Landeskog's return with very little of the downside. And the downside to both of your points is he's probably not going to be even close to the player he once was. And that's why I say from what Gabriel Landeskog can provide other than the emotional lift is, can he check dudes? Because I think the Avs could use some of that. I mean, he could still handle the puck. I mean, he's somewhere between what Gabriel Landeskog was and the worst player on the Avs roster. He's somewhere in there, and you have to find out what that is. But that's why you put him on a lower line, and you say, we're not putting all our eggs into this basket. We're gonna get the emotional lift. We're gonna give him his opportunity because he's been working so hard. I think there's a way that Jared Bednar can do this in a role he can put him in where he can do both. But then after the initial, hey, Landeskog's back, he finally did it, documentary over, all that kind of stuff, then Jared Bednar's got to assess him with the same critical eye he would assess everybody on this roster and say, you know, if Landeskog is terrible, then guess what? You got Miles Wood. And you make that change. As tough as that would be, I think really, if you're a Colorado sports fan, you have to understand the emotion needs to be taken out of it. Some of the emotion needs to be taken out of it. I'm all for Gabriel Landeskog's return. I'm all for giving him an opportunity on a lower line to bring some of that leadership, to give the team an emotional boost. But the minute that he's costing the Avs in the playoffs, gone. 719-247-1313. Right now in Dallas, they're showing a tribute video to Luka, who's about to be announced as a starter for the Los Angeles Lakers. That's the other NBA game going on tonight. We're more focused on Nuggets Kings, but Luka's return to Dallas will be a nice little appetizer as Luka looks up at the screen there in American Airlines Arena and watches the tribute video. They even made shirts in Slovenian, say thank you. All of this is kind of surreal, and all of this is kind of laughable. That the Mavericks are doing all of this when there is a world where they could have kept Luka and nobody would go, why do the Mavericks still have Luka? 719-247-1313. One more segment to go. Tom Segura is bringing his Come Together tour to Colorado Springs on Sunday, November 9th. Tickets on sale now, axs.com or in person at the Pikes Peak Center. Box Orifice. Well, Michael Scott for you there. So now we're ready for Luka to absolutely eviscerate the Dallas Mavericks. All the loving on everybody is over. Tribute video over. And now it is time for Luka to face the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm very intrigued by this game. And in a world where the Denver Nuggets did not just fire. Oh, that's a good shot. Luka, very emotional. His eyes welling up. His bottom lip is even trembling as he looks on. My God, I that would make me hate what the Mavericks did all the more. That dude got as emotional as I've ever seen a player get when it comes to a tribute video. And now he's going to go out and he's going to drop 40 on Dallas. If LeBron doesn't get in the way. Dang, LeBron, it's not your night. Took the opening tip and stop me if you heard this one before. Drew a foul. LeBron drawing a foul? I know, crazy, right? So in a world where the Denver Nuggets are not playing their first game without Michael Malone as head coach in more than a decade, and they're not fighting for their lives to stay out of the play-in, I would say that Luka's return to Dallas would be the main attraction of the evening. Certainly in the NBA world it is. For me, again, it will be just a nice thing to kind of hold me over until tonight's game. I saw this one earlier, and I was intentionally saving it until I talked about the general manager gig. I love this because I think right now you owe it to yourself to swing big. And I'm talking to you, the fan, and I'm talking to the Denver Nuggets. Right now, the ghost of Red Auerbach is not out of the realm of possibility. Like, you dream as big as you'd like to dream. And then we'll worry about the reality of the situation as we move forward. But Malone was fired yesterday. We can throw out some dream scenarios. And that's what I love about this texter, because there is no way in Hades that this would ever happen, but I love the intent behind this. From the 719, Pat Riley. What is the biggest problem with the Denver Nuggets right now? Culture. Little Pat Riley culture, little Heat culture coming to Denver. Why not? And I'll do you one better. Pat Riley leaves, brings Spo with him. I love it. I still think my Bob Myers, Steve Kerr double-double, if you will, is the most aspirational of all the scenarios, but that one's a close second. Pat Riley leaving Miami and heading up the Nuggets organization. That's a good one. I like that. I threw out for a potential coach, Jeff Van Gundy. I get it. It's not going to make you fall in love, right? This guy's been around for a million years, but listen to the way Brad Stevens has talked about. There's another one. Brad Stevens, come on down. You don't want to stay a general manager, do you? You could be both. You can install whatever puppet you like as the general manager, and you could be the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. Brad Stevens, that's another one you need to add to the list. As my kids would say, that would be an S tier. That would be in the S tier. Getting Brad Stevens out of Boston. But I get it. Jeff Van Gundy is not going to be, people aren't going to be dancing in the street that Jeff Van Gundy is the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, although Tom might be. I don't know. Is this a negative for Jeff Van Gundy or a positive? I can see Van Gundy now. There's a scuffle on the floor. Van Gundy has Jokic by the ankles, and Jokic is going Godzilla and wiping the floor with him. For our younger audience members, that happened. Except I will say, not to be a stickler for this kind of thing, but Jeff Van Gundy was holding the ankles of an opposing player. Right? He was not holding back his own player. He was trying to hold back somebody else, if memory serves. Or maybe I'm misremembering. Can the Jeff Van Gundy era be susceptible to the Mandela effect? And can the Mandela effect only affect one person? If one person misremembers something, can it truly be called the Mandela effect? Or does it always have to be a group of people? Psychologists in the greater Colorado Springs area, please weigh in. 719-247-1313. I get it, but again, we could throw out names all day, and we did for part of the day, which was fun. But I think it comes down to what you are looking for in a head coach. And Josh Kroenke is trying to figure that out for himself. What does he want? Does he just want everything Michael Malone was? Without, the being drunk on power and fighting with the general manager? Are we going to see him go in a very similar direction? Or is he going to want to go the opposite way? Former NBA head coach with a defensive background, to a coach with no NBA head coaching experience and an offensive mindset. To me, I want experience and all the intelligent minds I can get on the defensive end of the floor, I'm good with. So veteran coach or a coach with head coaching experience with a knack for defense. So I actually don't think it's that different than Michael Malone. I don't think that the Nuggets are looking for someone completely different. I think they liked a lot of what Michael Malone brought to the table, but they just, with their success, he felt more and more entitled. He just kind of got a little bit out of his lane and would not allow Calvin Booth to do his job. I don't think they're looking for anybody that is the polar opposite of Michael Malone. I think a lot of the issues with Michael Malone will naturally fix itself because you're bringing in somebody that has no reason to fight with the GM. In fact, you're bringing in a GM that will hire his coach. Everything will be copacetic between the GM and the head coach to start, and probably the coach isn't going to come in feeling like he has, full autonomy to say and do whatever he wants. But tonight is about David Adelman. Will it look different? Will we see more of the younger players under David Adelman? My guess is no. But I'll leave you with this. The one thing that we must see tonight from the Denver Nuggets, not just because it's in the wake of Michael Malone getting fired, what the Nuggets are going through right now, regardless of whether they did what they did yesterday or not, you would expect and be reasonable in that expectation that the Denver Nuggets would come out and play their butts off tonight. And now even more so, given the fact that Michael Malone has been fired. Either it's a shock to the system that a guy you never thought was going to get fired got fired, so I better straighten up and fly right, or hallelujah, this guy has been making my life a living hell and now he's gone, so I'm going to be free to have fun and play hard. I don't know where all these Nuggets players are. I think most of them fall in one of those two camps. Either way, they should be able to go into Sacramento and play inspired basketball. Or they'll keep doing the same thing and they'll be closer to the play-in. I mean, really, at this point, who knows? But that game can be heard tonight at 8 o'clock right here on Extra Sports 1300. I do very much appreciate your patronage today. Thanks for the interaction as well. Programming note, no show tomorrow because Frozen 4 can be heard right here on Extra Sports 1300, starting with the Pios and Western Michigan. That is at 3. And then the other national semifinal will be right after that. So I will be back with you on Friday. If you would like to chat in the meantime, at Gingerly Tweets on X probably, or Kaufman Sports on Instagram. Either way, you can find me there. Appreciate it. Enjoy the evening. Again, Nuggets and Kings coming up at 8 here on Extra Sports 1300.